breaking news from a federal judge in Boston, the latest of several to say the Trump administration could be violating court orders. The New York Times came out with a story shortly before airtime. A Burmese immigrant apparently put on a plane bound for South Sudan or Myanmar. The government's lawyer claims the second. The man's lawyer says the first. Judge Brian Murphy threatening to hold officials in contempt, warning the administration it had apparently violated an order he issued in April, barring this person's deportation without first giving him time to challenge his removal and ordering officials to locate the plane. Quoting now from the Times courtroom account, quote, during the hearing, Judge Murphy ordered a lawyer for the Justice Department, Elianis N. Perez, to notify everyone involved in the flight to South Sudan, from the pilot of the plane to officials in the Department of Homeland Security, that they could face criminal contempt sanctions if his ruling was not followed. He also instructed Ms. Perez to find out exactly where the plane was and whether it could be turned around mid-flight. Now, Ms. Perez told the judge she did not know where the plane was.
In the day's other headlines, the U.S. Supreme Court is allowing the Trump administration to restart deportations of migrants to countries other than their own. The case stems from an instance last month when immigration officials sent 8 people on a plane to South Sudan, though they were then diverted to Djibouti. A judge in Boston found that violated his court order, giving people a chance to argue that they could face torture if deported. The Supreme Court said its order will remain in place while the government appeals the Boston judge's ruling. All 3 liberal members of the court dissented.
Boy. So we got to talk about another W for President Trump, at least temporarily, when it comes to the mass deportations, because Democrats and the liberal activist judges are fighting tooth and nail to stop President Trump from mass deporting illegal immigrant criminals, including the violent ones, which apparently Democrats want to stay in this country. The liberal activist judges also want to stay in this country as well, too. And that is why a liberal activist judge basically tried to block President Trump from deporting the illegals to third-party countries, a.k.a. countries like South Sudan, right? I covered this story before, okay, involving illegals who were deported to South Sudan. And liberals got upset, right? And judges basically interfered, right, and essentially made the flight turn back around because they didn't want the illegal immigrant criminals to be deported to a place where, you know, they might get dropped off in the middle of a war, okay? And again, this is something that liberals were upset about, boohoo-whining and crying on CNN.
Tonight, a deportation dispute as the court clashes with President Trump over his immigration agenda. A federal judge says that the administration unquestionably violated a previous order when it tried to send detainees to war-torn South Sudan without giving them a chance to contest their removal. It's just the latest chapter in the ongoing tug-of-war between the judiciary and the executive as Trump plows forward with his border crackdown. DHS officials say they did nothing wrong.
While we are fully compliant with the law and court orders, it is absolutely absurd for a district judge to try to dictate the foreign policy and national security of the United States of America.
Vice President J.D. Vance echoed a similar message and took a swipe at the Supreme Court's Chief Justice, John Roberts, who said the judiciary's role is to check the executive.
I thought that was a profoundly wrong sentiment. That's one half of his job. The other half of his job is to check the excesses of his own branch. And you cannot have a country where the American people keep on electing immigration enforcement and the courts tell the American people they're not allowed to have what they voted for.
They're attempting to have a deterrence to showcase to people you cannot continue to come to the United States. One, it's a national security problem. We have no idea who some of these people are. And two, it is a legit.
We know who these people are. I mean,
we don't know 20 million, however many of these people
I'm talking about
legally.
the ones that they're sending to
okay,
Sudan.
but my point is, broadly speaking, for the most part, we have no idea who the people are who are coming into our country illegally. Number two, it is an excessive strain on all resources across the board. Healthcare, crime, school, education, healthcare. We don't have, I keep saying this, I don't know why Democrats don't understand this. We don't have unlimited resources
but my question was, why are they,
as a deterrence, to make it clear, if you come into the country, you will get sent somewhere you do not want to go.
So the idea here is that we are going to deter people by saying, you committed a crime here, maybe they did, and we're going to send you, hold on. Okay,
sorry, go ahead.
We're going to send you to a country where we're saying there's a civil war happening. There's a genocide occurring there. We don't know what's going to happen to them. Why not send them back to their countries of origin, which is what we do with everybody else?
We don't know what's going to happen to them there
either. I think that's exactly
and they
the
have
point.
broken the law, Abby. When you come into the country, you've committed a felony. And number two, you have to deter this behavior from continuing to happen because it has become a problem for this country.
So the deterrence is, like El Salvador, we'll send them to places where they might face imminent death.
Absolutely.
And
because that sends a message. If you come to the United States and break our laws, violate our immigration laws, it will have severe consequences.
So for unspecified crimes, we don't know exactly what all these people were convicted of.
They broke the law.
Hold on a second.
Can I read it?
They were convicted. Maybe they were convicted of very serious crimes.
I'll read it.
The penalty that the Trump administration says is appropriate potentially could be death.
I mean,
right?
I'll read it. Sex offenders, homicide,
right,
kidnapping, murder in the first degree, battery, larceny, cocaine possession, murder, robbery, DUI, child sex abuse, and sex assault on someone with a mental illness. The Sudan is too good for these people. And I'm not sure any other country would take them.
But what about their home country?
I'm not sure they'll take them. Would you take that person back?
How do you know that?
Well, one of them came from Cuba.
No.
I have to say,
how do you know that?
I don't care what
Vietnam.
we do with them. These are heinous, violent criminals, and they do not need to be here. That's all I know.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, at the time, liberals on CNN, like Abby Phillip, they were really upset. They were really mad about criminals being dropped off in war zones, right? In third-party countries, okay? Because these people really care about the so-called human rights, the constitutional rights of violent, illegal immigrant criminals, right? This is who liberals care about. And I'm pretty sure that she's going to be upset to hear that the Supreme Court has issued a brief, unsigned emergency order, basically allowing the Trump administration to resume the expedited removals of the illegal immigrants to these third countries, meaning that other nations, other than the illegal immigrants' home country, without prior notice or opportunity to object, can be deported there. Okay, and this is what the Supreme Court put out in an emergency order. Take a look.
There's been a breaking decision by the U.S. Supreme Court regarding the deportation of immigrants with criminal convictions. We want to get right over to KPRC2's Robert Arnold, who's read the decision and has more details. Robert?
First off, this ruling is not the end of this particular legal battle, and I'll explain that more in a minute. This deals with the federal government's authority to deport immigrants with criminal convictions to countries they have no previous connection with. Lawsuits were filed on behalf of several immigrants accused of being in the country illegally and convicted of crimes. These individuals could not be deported to their home country, so President Trump's administration was deporting them to third countries like Sudan that agreed to accept the individuals. The legal argument is if someone is being deported to a place other than their home country, they should be given a chance to argue why that would put their life in danger. A lower court shot down this practice and ordered the Trump administration to give immigrants being sent to third countries the chance to plead their case. The federal government appealed, and today the U.S. Supreme Court issued a stay, meaning President Trump's administration can continue this practice. But that lawsuit is still working its way through the courts, so that's why I said earlier, this is not the end of the matter. Live in the newsroom, Robert Arnold, KPRC 2 News.
Yeah, so again, this is at the very least a temporary W, okay? Because again, you have these woke activist judges issuing these nationwide injunctions in order to stop the president from carrying out the agenda that he was voted in office to do, okay? And that includes, again, this woke judge out of the Massachusetts U.S. District Court, Mr. Brian Murphy, okay, who is been accused by Stephen Miller and Mike Davis and others of defying the Supreme Court because clearly he is upset about the fact that his court order, right, his injunction blocking the president got slapped down by the Supreme Court. And Stephen Miller issued a warning that tomorrow fireworks are going to fly, right, against this judge, right, in terms of what they're going to do in order to punish this judge for basically ignoring the Supreme Court.
Quickly, we have less than a minute. Your reaction, this court decision is massive, Steve.
Yes, this is an incredible victory, the Supreme Court win. It allows President Trump, as the law has long said, but the courts have blocked, it allows President Trump to send illegal aliens convicted of rape, murder, homicide, assault, battery, crimes against children to any country around the world that is willing to accept them. So whether that be South Sudan, or whether it be Somalia, or whether it be Ethiopia, any country in the world that is willing to accept these monsters, we can get them out of our country and be free of them forever. The only thing I have to share tonight, Sean, in a little bit of breaking news, is that the district court judge in Boston has said he's going to defy the Supreme Court's ruling. So expect fireworks tomorrow when we hold this judge accountable for refusing to obey the Supreme Court.
All right, Steve Miller, we always appreciate you being on. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so fireworks are coming tomorrow, according to Stephen Miller. Okay, now we're going to see exactly what happens, but this is what he had to say here on X. He says a district judge has just announced he will openly defy the unambiguous ruling issued today by the Supreme Court and continue to block the expulsion of illegal aliens convicted of child rape and murder. Judicial coup. Okay, so again, we're going to see what happens, right? Mike Davis says this left-wing radical Biden judge just jammed through the Senate in December in the lame duck session after Democrats lost the White House and Senate. 6 months to the job, Massachusetts U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy is now openly defying a Supreme Court order. Impeach. Yeah. So here's the thing. This is the order, okay, that they're saying has defied the Supreme Court. Right? These judges are basically going out of their way to try to sidestep the Supreme Court. And the way that they're doing this is that they're basically saying, okay, we can't issue nationwide injunctions. But what they are trying to do is that they're trying to deal with it on a case-by-case basis, right? So they're basically blocking what President Trump is trying to do on a case-by-case basis. Okay, that's what they're trying to do. And that is where these accusations are coming from. And apparently the Trump administration, they're going to try to hold these judges accountable, okay? Because what they're doing is that, again, they can't do it on a nationwide basis, but they're trying to block the deportations on an individual basis. They're trying to do it in a narrower way in order to get around the Supreme Court, right? So we're going to see what happens, okay? We're going to see what happens. But yeah, I think it's time to start punishing some judges, to be honest with you, okay? I'm sick and tired of these nationwide injunctions. I'm sick and tired of these activists getting in the way of the agenda that the American people voted for. And again, this is what I'm talking about when people want to try to pretend like President Trump is not fulfilling his promise on mass deportations. Like, nobody can come out here with a straight face and say that Trump is not putting in 100% effort when it comes to the mass deportations, right? But I've seen some people say that specifically in response to when Trump does something they don't like. They'll turn around and say, well, we're not getting mass deportations. We're getting war with Iran, right? Except we're not getting war with Iran, and we are getting the mass deportations, okay? So, you know, it's just funny to me how, even though it is clear that President Trump is trying to fulfill his campaign promises, people are still basically trying to say that he's not, right? Even though he is, okay? It's something where you have a whole system, right? A whole branch of the government fighting against him, okay? In ways they did not do for previous administrations. And that's what people got to understand. So again, we're going to see what happens. But yes, I think it's time for some of these judges to be held accountable. So we will see what the White House announces tomorrow. But until then, this is another W for President Trump when it comes to the mass deportation. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.